I've heard you mention, multiple times about marriage being a bad proposition for men.
Yeah.
And I really kind of want to dive into that because I feel like, and I talked to Elliot Hulse about this, where like you're correct, and only 3% of the population waits. 97% of people do not wait to have sex until marriage.
Women though, a lot of men are virgins even into their 30s still.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, that's the study I read must have been for women. I did not know that, but I guess with the 80% of the men not having sex, that would make sense.
There's a lot of guys that are in their 30s right now. I think the data says something like 30% of men up to the age of 30 or 33 are not having sex.
Yeah, I don't think they're making it to the wedding night as virgins though, because aren't they sleeping with the girl while they're dating?
They might get lucky and get, a short-term girlfriend, or they might get, one girl, sort of under the belt and have a little bit of experience. But the vast majority of men today are actually sexless. Like they're not having good results with women. They're not even dating. There's a large community of men out there. They're called black pillars, incels. And they get together and they spend a lot of time online. They make a lot of videos. They have discussion forums, and they talk about how they were dealt a terrible hand. Their jaw structure is not right. They're not tall enough. Their skin color is wrong. They just sort of there's a lot of whinging and whining. It's very similar to the victim mindset that feminists use, except for they're just saying like, it's not fair. And why can't women just see me, for what I am, because I'm a really nice guy sort of thing. And it's like, well, if you're 300 pounds and living in your mom's basement playing video games with a neck beard, there's not a lot of women that are going to, want to chase you down, my friend. Yeah.
So I guess where I wanted to go with that was, like you say marriage is a bad proposition for men. I definitely think in the climate that we're living in, there's truth in that. But what I feel like is the problem stems from the fact that if people aren't waiting, they're not committed to waiting, men or women. Like, so you were married and you were divorced. Now, did you have sex before marriage?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, most people do, right? And everybody says, you got to take a car for a test drive, right? Everybody, that's the number one argument people give back to me when I talk about waiting. But I'm like, if that works so well, why is the divorce rate 50% when that's what everybody's doing? So my thought and my belief, heavily based on my own experience, and this is really kind of what my book is all about, was I used to be the biggest man whore in Baltimore. I had sex with hundreds of women, hundreds of
biggest man whore in Baltimore.
I was the biggest man. I was well known too.
Okay.
And I was a stripper and I was a nightclub promoter, and I just had tons of casual sex. And then I became a Christian. I had this radical encounter with Jesus when I was 27. And selfishly, I believed that if I didn't sin long enough, I knew what I was signing up for when I followed. I mean, I know that, monogamy is basically what I was signing up for, and I was willing to do it. But I thought, well, if I don't sin long enough, God will give me a wife. I'd never been in love, and I felt like, if I behaved myself, He would give me a wife. And I didn't think it was going to be long, and it turned into 6 years of abstinence. And then I backslid, is what they call it. I don't know if you're a Christian, but I basically went out, started having sex again, had a bunch more sex, a bunch more women, and then rededicated my life. And somewhere in there, from living at the polar ends of the spectrum, back and forth, I really started to understand like why I kept getting into these relationships with these women that it was lackluster. Every relationship wasn't that great because I wasn't asking myself the hard questions on the front end. So now I've been, outside of 2 isolated mistakes, I've been abstaining from sex for 11 years. Imagine it's pretty tough. And I could get sex if I want it anytime. And, but I can look at a woman now and say, is she everything you want? Is she your best yes? Before I was having sex on the front, I wasn't thinking about my best yes. I was like, she's hot, take her out. We're going to have sex sooner or later. And then I would end up drifting into relationships with these women, some of them, not all of them, but some of them. And like you said, men complicate their lives and then they justify it. And that's exactly what, I'd be in these lackluster relationships that I would stay in with women that, arguing all the time or lots of problems. And I would stay in these relationships because that's what the biology of the sex does. A woman pair bonds to a man, even if he's 1 foot in and 1 foot out, he might be even sleeping with other women, and she's going to, stand by her man. And then the man feels a sense of ownership over the woman, doesn't want other guys to bang her, even if he wants even if he wants to date or sleep with other women, or even if she's a complete bitch. And people get these soul ties, is what they call it in Christianese, and they spend their whole lives with the wrong people. And I believe it all goes back to the fact that you didn't do it God's way. You didn't wait. So now this is what you get. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm not a religious guy, so I don't subscribe to any organized religion, and I don't think humans are great at monogamy. If we're being honest, I don't believe that we were. I mean, evolutionarily speaking, and again, I'm coming at this from a different angle, from you obviously, but from that perspective, we never operated as monogamous pair bonders. We were nomadic hunter gatherers. There was lots of promiscuous sex. It's kind of always been that way. I think that religion can be a good buffer. I mean, if you want to invite a woman in your life, I would say a woman that subscribes to a religion that is good for the family household, for the household unit, for children, for her pair bonding to you, to looking up to you, to letting you lead, and encouraging the man to lead, obviously, that can be a good thing. So I'm not opposed to it. Like, my kid goes to a Catholic school, obviously, right? So I don't have issues with it, but I don't like a lot of the trad con sort of narratives that push guys into marriage blindly. I think that you have to open your eyes to the reality of what marriage is. You have to recognize that in most places in the West, if you get married, you are essentially inviting the state into your household. The state is built in such a way that it actually encourages women to get divorced. Like, women are financially incentivized today to leave their families, to leave their husband, because they will make a lot more money from the government as a single mom raising the kids, having most of the control raising those kids, and alienating the father from those kids. Like, there's financial incentives to breaking up the household. So I have an entire chapter in my book on why smart men don't marry. I don't know if you've read my book yet.
No, I read the Cliff Notes.
Yeah. Okay. So it's probably worth checking out. I mean, you're not going to agree with all of it, obviously, but I think you'll get some insight from my perspective, especially on things like marriage and, a few other ideas in there. But I think that if you're going to get married, you need to vet women properly. It's not on the table for me. Like, without question, I would never get married again. Right. I'm in a long-term relationship. I got a great gal, she's my girlfriend. We've been together for a while. We're monogamous. But I would never get married. I mean, if she said, if you don't marry me, then I'm going to leave, I would just say, okay, fine, bye. Right. I would have to be okay with that, because I'm not that guy that would allow the state to govern what happens in my household.
Right.
Now, there's things that you can do to mitigate those risks or minimize them. There's states that you can move to that are equal or father friendly, like Kentucky, for example. Arizona, they're right at the top of the list. You can vet for red flags. You can make sure she's got a low notch count or no notch count. There's a lot of things that you can do, but by the time you do all of those things, you're probably left with less than 1 or 2% of the female population. And then you have to, consider, well, okay, if in that dating demographic, there's only 1 or 2% of the women, available to me. How many of them am I actually going to be attractive enough to that they're going to see me as their hypergamous best option? They're going to see me as their apex alpha male and want to be with me, sort of thing. So it's a difficult proposition. And even if you layer it with, protective measures, even if you want to get a prenup, if that's your thing, women always reserve the right to change their mind at any given time. I've talked to lots of guys during my consults, because one of the things that I did a lot of coaching on was guys going through the divorce grinder. In fact, a lot of the data that's in my book comes from many of my consults too. And I remember talking to several guys that were like, she came from a good family. The parents were intact. The siblings were all intact. Good Christian lives, went to church every weekend. Conservative, always voted, conservative, from a red state. All of those things ticked off all the boxes. But then he's like, but then she started working in HR in this woke corporation, cut her hair short, got fat, dyed her hair purple, got some weird tattoos. And now we're getting divorced and I don't recognize her, and she's taking the kids and she won't let me see them. And it's like, that story didn't happen just once. Like I saw versions of that movie many, many times over and over again. So one of the things that you have to understand as a guy is, if you do invite a woman in your life on a long-term basis and you create a family with her, she always reserves the right to change her mind at any given time. One of the big demographic categories for guys today are these dudes that they call themselves the passport bros. I don't know if you heard about these guys, where they figure that, Western women's minds are polluted with toxic feminism. So they're better off getting a gal from Latin America, from Asia, from Eastern Europe or something like that. And they fail to recognize that if you bring a woman from one of those countries to the West will pollute their mind over time, eventually, right? Because everything in media, marketing, advertising, government, it's all about, women are oppressed, men are oppressors, BLM, like you go right down the list of all the stuff. There's rainbow flags and square flags and all these flags everywhere. There's pride months for this and that and the other thing. They're going to start to hear all of these narratives, and you're going to have really good frame to maintain that long-term relationship. And only an unplugged alpha's got great frame, right? Most guys are plugged in beta males. So they think that they solve the problem by bringing somebody from another country over, but the grim reality of it is they end up getting destroyed over time.
Yeah.
Most of them anyway.
Yeah. I definitely heard you talk a lot about the family law, and I agree with it. I mean, I even think about, like, single moms getting more money from welfare if they have more kids out of wedlock. Like there's so many laws that are just completely contrary to what we're trying to accomplish here. And
exactly.
It's almost like,
well, what you're trying to accomplish is different from the agenda that they are trying to, cram down everybody's throat. Like it seems clear to me anyway, that their agenda is the pussification of the West. They don't want strong, virtuous males leading the household. They want the government at the head of the household. They want women thinking that they're victims, right? So, when you start to look at all these narratives and you start to dive real deep down the rabbit hole, like you start to realize, well, this is a pretty messy environment, right? And it's like, I'm kind of the guy now that's more of the enjoy the decline. Like, with my stuff, my content, my videos, I like to just take a big map and I'll be like, okay, here's all the landmines on the map. So just don't step in them, sort of thing. And you should be good. Yeah. So that's how I tend to operate now. It's like some people say it's doom and gloom. Some people say, well, it's just accepting the world for what it is. And it's just the reality of things. And I kind of lean on the latter because that's my style. But I got a great relationship. My life's amazing. I got amazing friends. Business is great. So, I think that my results at least speak for themselves in that sense.
Yeah. You're a realist. I guess where I'm trying to go with it is I'm trying to get an idealist where I'm like, if everybody, and I know this will never happen, but if I could convince everybody to wait, right? Then you got a world full of people that are saying their best yes. Women, they're married. No, they're not going to marry as virgins because there are a lot of people that aren't virgins right now, but they would still stop and they would have to choose their best yes. And that would create a lot more successful relationship than just drifting into something, when you're.
Yeah. And I love that notion. I wish that notion was true, but I mean, like, how do you fight the woke narrative of like the mainstream, like, even in popular culture and music, like when I was a kid, the music that I would listen to was like, Metallica, Kiss, Twisted Sister, Poison, Warrant, Guns N' Roses. Like those were cool bands that had an interesting message. And a lot of it would, if you listen to the lyrics, especially in the ballads, like they were a lot of just, love her and she broke your heart and you'll get over her and don't be a suck sort of thing. But, today's pop culture is, you get artists like Lil Nas who are twerking on the devil. Yeah. And it's just like homosexual, and that's normal, right? Like I can't go somewhere now. A lot of language, we can't use today. The R word, the T word, like all these words are now like the initial word, right? Like I was driving the other day and there was a tranny across the road. And I still use the term tranny, not transsexual, because to me, tranny is short for transsexual. Walking across the street, my daughter's in the car, I say, get a load of the tranny over there. You can't say that. That's not politically correct. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is where we are today. This is what school, and Catholic school, right? This is what society, this is what culture, this is what screens have like taught our children now, even at these young age. Like you can't use these words because it's offensive. It's going to hurt. That's weird. Okay. Like that was weird when I was a kid, but today it's like, oh, you have to embrace it. You have to bring it into your life. They send these, drag queens to schools and libraries and the public school system to read to small children. Like that's disgusting. Yeah. But that's just the way that I see things. So it's like, your point, like I love the idea. Like I wish the world was that way, but the grim reality of the situation is it's not. Yeah. And it's a weird and dangerous place. And I think that, if you're going to have a family and you want to have kids, find the right gal, make sure you vetted her properly. I would get the hell out of an urban city center, especially like the left-leaning liberal ones. Get out in the damn country. Yeah. Grow as much of your food as you can. Keep that woke crap away from your kids. Homeschool them, as long as you can. People say, well, homeschool kids are weird. No, kids that go to the public system are a lot weirder than the
Sure.
homeschool kids that I really hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full length podcast, you can find that over here, that clip's from. If you're newer to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe over here, and pin down below in the top comment, you'll find a bunch of useful links to my website, my supplement line, books, and a bunch of other stuff. Have an amazing day. Peace out.